Hello friends, my name is Andre and I'm the founder of CruzLog. It's an app created for the cruise industry and in particular the passengers. We have the extreme privilege and pleasure to have secured a few minutes of this man's precious time. He's someone that can be considered a captain in the industry. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Ross Volk, the Managing Director of MSC South Africa.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks very much for having me. And hello to your listeners and watchers.
Thank you very much, and thanks for hosting us today, Ross.
Pleasure.
Ross, I know you're an extremely busy man and that you don't give away much, not many media interviews and all those good things. But but we're going to kind of push you a little bit today to give our users, our viewers, a sense of who you are.
Sure.
And how you fit into the cruise industry. I hope you don't mind.
No, sure, no problem.
Great stuff. So, Ross, do you mind telling us just a little bit about yourself?
Cool, sure, no problem. So, I mean, just from a professional perspective, I'm a chartered accountant by profession. So I worked for 13 years with KPMG. I studied at Wits, did my undergraduate, postgraduate degrees there, and then qualified as a CA, I think at the end of 2005 or end of 2006, I can't remember, it's that far back, you know, it starts to get a bit hazy. And then I worked, as I said, with KPMG for 13 years in varying roles. I travelled the world with them. I visited 90 countries approximately, doing various things across the board, but obviously core focus was still auditing within the banking and insurance sector. And then within industrial and automotive kind of department that was there.
Wow.
So I found myself in Dallas for a few years as well. It was an interesting experience. And then I joined MSC as the Chief Financial Officer. And then in December 2016, I took over running the business for the South African operation, or Southern African operation.
And you've been with MSC ever since?
Yep, for 6 years now.
And really enjoying the cruise industry?
Well, it's a lovely industry, although the last 2 years have been remarkably frustrating and difficult to manage. But you know, I think that's been the case for everybody.
So Ross, of all the cruise companies, and there are many we have come to understand in the world, you've chosen one that is led to believe the largest family-owned shipping business in the world. Is that correct?
Yeah, so MSC globally from a cargo and cruising perspective, the largest family-owned cargo business and the largest family-owned cruise business around. I think soon to be cargo will probably be one of the largest cargo company in the world, probably next year or the year after.
Wow.
I think that's the target.
Wow. Okay. And I mean, they're growing year on year. They're building new vessels or ships.
Yeah, we're seeing a number of vessels being brought out. So this year alone, we've had 2 launches of 2 new vessels, and there's a couple of planned ones for 2022 and early 2023. So it's quite an ambitious target in terms of that. And from a capital perspective, we still managed to maintain all of the investments, which I think is beautiful.
That's amazing.
And I think that's one of the things that sets MSC apart from other industries or other cruise companies within the industry.
Wow.
Is that it has a very family-orientated vibe. It has an incredibly good culture, and one that is very fast acting in terms of the way it responds to challenges within the world, as you've seen.
Yes.
You know, it's an organization that's incredibly well run and administered, great leadership, and also from a family perspective has a very clear vision. And I think that's one of the differentiating characteristics of MSC, and something that's a unique selling point for the business is just how quickly they can change and manage the situation in difficult times.
And just to give our users a bit of a perspective in terms of the size of MSC, how many ships in total?
So we got 19 at the moment, and
Okay.
we'll have another, I think 2 or 3, 2 next year, so sort of up to 21. And the plan, I think, is to go as high as probably 28 vessels.
Wow.
And we've just launched our new luxury brand in the middle of this year, April or May. And there's going to be 1 luxury brand vessel released in 2023, which will be 500 suites.
Oh,
Only
suites.
500 suites, yeah.
Wow.
It's catering for the ultra luxury.
So Ross, just in terms of cruising and these ships, I mean, they come in varying capacities. What's sort of the smallest ships versus the largest ships that?
So the smallest ships we have in our fleet is the Lyrica class, which is approximately 2,250 maximum capacity.
Mm-hmm.
It's got between 980 and 1,000 cabins, depending on the configuration of the vessel. Next class is the Musica class, which has in the region of 1,275 cabins, which is the Musica that you see here,
Beautiful.
Orchestra, Poesia, and Magnifica. And then the Fantasia class has around 1,600 beds, cabins. And then you start getting into the super mega ships, which Meraviglia class, Seaside class, Meraviglia Plus, Seaside Evo, which have upwards of 2,000 cabins.
Okay. And the largest ships in your class, can they take up to?
So there's, I think, Grandiose is currently the large, or Virtuoso is the largest vessel in our fleet. It's approximately, I think, around 6,000 passengers.
Wow, it's just huge.
Yeah.
These are floating hotels, quite literally.
Effectively, yeah. Well, they're a lot snazzier than hotels, because you can do a lot on the ocean that you can't do in a land-based facility. So they've got everything. I mean, the Virtuoso's got ability to have fine dining. You've got multitudes of restaurants to choose from. You've got Michelin-star chefs cooking for you on board. You've got multiples of different shows. We did have Cirque du Soleil, but COVID has obviously impacted that. We had a theatre specifically built for that Cirque du Soleil facility. You've got all sorts of other options available. Chocolate factory that you can go make your own chocolate. The entertainment for children is incredible. You've got Formula One simulators. You've got full basketball courts. You've got two bowling alleys, so you can challenge your friends to a bowling environment. You've got all the party facilities, subject to COVID regulations, but they're all there.
Yeah.
So I think if you have children, it's one of those things that's the best option for you, because you'll be having the time of your life, and they'll be having the time of your life, and you don't have to look after them.
And well catered for.
Yeah.
You'll see them at meal times, I suppose, but that's about
well, I think you have to impose curfew on them rather than you'll see them. It's an option that they'll come back to you.
I have to admit to our users that I've been privileged enough to be on an MSC ship, and it's called the Meraviglia, the one that Ross has mentioned, got club option. And everything that Ross has spoken about now, we enjoyed. And when we got off the ship, when we disembarked, my wife thought that I was the butler. She was spoiled rotten, and she just thoroughly enjoyed it, that she never wanted to go on another holiday if it wasn't the same caliber of holiday.
So I think that's an important concept that's been introduced by MSC, is the ship within a ship concept. So although you've got 6,000 passengers on Virtuoso, there's a certain amount of cabins set aside in the yacht club, and varying categories inside, ocean view, balconies, suites, that allow you the opportunity to have exclusivity. So there's your own dining room, your own swimming pool. You get on board at your own leisure. You don't have to follow a strict routine. You get a 24-hour butler service. So it's a home away from home, and you've got the ability to go away from the masses of people. And it's an extremely value-orientated product. So it's not out of most people's reach. It's the ability to get everything. Everyone can get there if they're frugal enough.
So Ross, MSC is obviously a truly global company. We find ourselves in sunny South Africa. We're starting to come out of COVID. South Africa is not considered one of the biggest cruising destinations in the world. How does South Africa fare in terms of the other destinations, do you think?
I think it's probably not a fair statement that South Africa is not a cruising destination. I think it has a number of different factors that are outside the remit of a cruise company to manage, chiefly among them infrastructure. But from an MSC perspective, South Africa still plays a very significant role in terms of the global number of passengers carried. So I think from our perspective, South Africa is a very important cruising destination, and it's something that's incredibly important for us to manage. So,
is it true to say that MSC is the only shipping company or cruise company that has a physical presence in South Africa?
So we have an office that's permanently here. All the others are GSAs or have an administrative office, and sales are handled outside of the country.
That's a very interesting point. So if people really want to get hold of MSC, they can come directly to the offices. They're not talking to somebody on the phone that is remote.
They're talking to a South African.
Yes.
They're dealing with a South African.
Important.
They're talking to a South African, and they're managed by a South African.
And South Africans are great people. So I just want to make mention of that. Ross, I want to get to another point. Historically, cruising has always been seen as an elitist holiday. That you get the super rich that are traveling in super luxury, and the poor minions can't afford cruising. Is that correct?
I think that's completely incorrect at the current stage. So, I mean, cruising maybe 100 years ago or 150 years ago was the bastion of the elite. At the moment, it's probably one of the most cost-effective holidays that you can possibly have out there, because your entertainment, your food is all included. So you're paying one price, you know what you're paying. The only thing extra after that is drinks, and you can cap that exposure by taking drinks vouchers. So I think we've seen a massive evolution of cruising from where it was to where it is today, and I think it's far more inclusive in terms of where it is. I mean, the average price probably of a 3-night cruise. Sorry, we've just got load shedding. The generator will kick in shortly. The average price for a couple to go on a 3-night cruise is probably in the region of around 10,000 Rand, depending on the time of year, for 2 people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about when you go to a hotel after you've done food, drinks, entertainment, all that kind of stuff, you've paid well in excess of that. So the reality is that cruising is now probably the best value for money holiday that you can possibly get. And you don't unpack.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You get on, you're there the whole time, and you don't have to worry about going anywhere else, and you see different places. I mean, it's incredible. And I think we're seeing that as well in terms of the biggest demographic being, 45-year-olds or 40 to 50-year-olds going on cruising, rather than in the past you would have seen it was sort of your more
mature,
more experienced people in the world.
So Ross, I suppose what would be interesting to our users as well is that when cruising started in South Africa, or relatively started in South Africa a few years ago, we started with, was it the Sinfonia?
So the first cruise vessel that I'm aware of that catered for South African cruises would be Kilalara.
Oh, okay.
Or the Oceanus, actually, probably.
Yeah, Oceanus. Yeah. We know what happened.
So the
to
Oceanus
those,
and then the Kilalara, yeah.
Yes. And your first, or MSC's first ship?
So the GSA that sold it, the Kilalara, would have been the first.
I see. Okay.
The first entity owned by Mr. Ponta, who's the owner of the entire group, and then it would have been Symphony, Rhapsody, Melody, Symphonia, and the like from 2003 onwards.
We've also noticed that MSC is now embarked on bringing slightly larger ships into South Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And more as well.
Yeah, so we were planned to bring 2 vessels this year, but obviously COVID restrictions in various places, Namibia, South Africa, put pay to that. So we're bringing MSC one of their Musica class at this present moment in time, and next year, 2022, 2023, we'll bring again 2 vessels to South Africa. Okay. One out of Cape Town, one out of Durban.
That's great. I want to finish off because I know Ross is very busy, I want to finish off by saying that it's been absolutely great being here at MSC, being hosted by Ross and his team. And Ross, just for the folks out there, just very briefly, when do you plan to start cruising this year?
Well, obviously we've got the good news that the South African government has allowed cruise vessels back into port effective 1 October. So that was published last week Friday, or 2 weeks ago Friday. Unfortunately, we're still waiting the guidelines of how to execute the cruise season.
It's a bit of a moving target, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately, at the moment. So we're busy liaising with the various government departments around this, and we hope to have an announcement on the season probably in the next 10 days or so. So our commitment is to continue the South African season this year, but we obviously have to analyse the guidelines and see what government's telling us in terms of what we can and can't do, because we want to make sure that we do it in the safest possible space. We don't want to put anyone at risk.
And is it fair enough to say that ticket sales are open? And
tickets are open, not moving as fast as one would hope, but I think that's because the confirmation's not there. As soon as the confirmation comes, I think we'll get some benefit. That
sounds great. We look forward to votes. We look forward to opening up the cruising season in South Africa. And again, to Ross and his team, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming through.
Cheers.
Cool.
All the best.
Cheers.